Before this, I had never really played any of the Paper Mario games. I'd heard good things, especially about the first two. But then I realised I had a Wii U collecting dust, so I decided to give this one a shot. Paper Mario Colour Splash. And something I noticed straight away is that they didn't seem to want to make these games past the second one unless they had a gimmick. With Super Paper Mario it was 2D, 3D squishing perspective. With Sticker Star it was stickers. And now it's colouring in apparently. So I guess it's only a matter of time before we get Paper Mario staples or Paper Mario post-it notes. The game gets off to an atmospheric start, on a dark and stormy night no less. Mario is shown a mysterious letter, which unfurls into a toad. Now, I might have guessed he just figured out a cheaper way to travel, but no, apparently in this universe, this is the equivalent of finding a body in a suitcase. And so our hero set off to Prism Island, which to my disappointment wasn't triangular. When entering the town, you might have thought there'd been a bukkake party that got out of hand, but no, those are actually colourless spots, and there are no prizes for guessing what we're doing for the rest of the game. So, it's more or less like Super Mario Sunshine, except in reverse. Soon after, we meet our partner for the game, the cleverly named Huey. He is actually a really good character, witty, helpful, and one of the best parts of the story. He greets our heroes and friend. Ooh, Mario's gonna need a mushroom for that. Now, there's a good lesson to be learned here. Just because you save a woman's kingdom doesn't mean you're getting any cake. Not even a few crumbs. Huey explains to us what we'll be collecting for this game. 6 big paint stars. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. So, if you're past the age of 7, you should be familiar with this. After a short time, we discover what's been happening as we stumble across a toad that's being drained. I bet he didn't expect this when he used Grinder. Now we get our first battle. To attack, you first pick a card and slide it here. At the beginning of the game, you only get 1 card slot, but you get more at certain points. You paint the card like so. Now, you can use a blank card, although it is less effective, and some cards come pre-painted. I'll talk more about that later, and when you're done, you just slide it here to attack. When attacking, you can increase the damage you do by pressing A at a certain point. It's the old timed hits that you've probably seen in other RPGs, or other Mario RPGs for that matter. And if you want to practice it, you can visit this guy in town here. It won't be weird. Well, now you've made it weird. You see, this is why no one responds to you on Craigslist. With the introductory mini-star collected, we get a glimpse on how this game is structured, and it's very reminiscent of Mario World. Each level has a star, you collect that, a new path opens up. But some levels, as you'll see later, have hidden stars, and they open up alternative paths. We set off on the first actual level, Ruddy Road, and I'm reminded of a saying I heard in high school: if the road's a little red, take the dirt path instead. This first level, unfortunately, highlights an issue I have with the earlier part of this game. It's the level themes. They just aren't that interesting. I mean, it's a road, it's red. This does get better later on, but it's not a good start. Surely in, we get a good example of the painting mechanic. You just hit a blank spot with your hammer and it gets coloured in, with different objects requiring different colours. And if you don't have enough of a certain colour, or none at all, you just can't paint it in. This is often needed to progress. You may have to paint a door to open it, for example. Painting patches also gives you cards, and may often provide a hint as to what kind of cards you need to use. This becomes more important later in the game. The downside to this is that it uses paint, and paint is essentially your flower points or mana in this game, so you do have to keep an eye on that. The house is painted, and we discover it's more crammed than Chinese public transport. Oh, and by the way, get used to seeing a lot of toads. To point out something I do like about this game, it's the writing. The dialogue and gags in this game are great. They even make a Lost Levels reference. It's the sort of thing that makes this game enjoyable. Next level up, it's Cherry Lake, my first time being here. And I guess it's more interesting than Ruddy Road, but just by this much. We also get to see the cutout mechanic. It's basically what it sounds like. You cut along lines to jump into the background to reach a new area or reveal a secret. Something I'll show you here is the experience points, by which I mean the game doesn't really use them. Instead you collect these silver hammers and they fill up your paint meter, which is beneficial, but there's no increase in stats. In fact, stats aren't even a factor. Max health and card slots are increased at set events in the game. You could call it streamlining, but it's more watering down. It makes random battles a simple nuisance. Later on, you don't even want to get into a fight. As we progress, we see Mario's biggest fan. This is another mechanic in the game. You squeeze a 3D item and keep it as a card to solve puzzles later. At least it shows the developers have passed their beginners 3D modelling classes. And hey, they've even mastered the twist modifier. The logic of what things to use, and that's what they're called, things, it can be inconsistent at times. You'll see later on. At this point, I noticed a pattern. A lot of the enemies were Shy Guys, with just a few variants here and there, and a lot of recolours. Now, you could say this fits into the whole theme of different colours on Prism Island, but I frankly wouldn't buy that excuse. Next, we meet Justice Toad, the hero Prism Island doesn't deserve, want or need, and it's up to you to collect his clothes. Now, my first guess is that he might have left them in a phone box, but you are better off running this errand because you'll need him later. After that level done, I paid a visit to the card shop in town. Before, I mentioned you have to keep an eye on how much paint you have. If you can't paint a card before you use it, it will just produce a weak attack. A way of getting around this is to buy your cards pre-painted, although it does cost significantly more coins. There is a good way to grind money, of course, but it's very hit and miss. It's the Ranchambeau temples. You probably know better as rock, paper, scissors. Once a temple opens up, you just go there to compete. Beat opponents to make money. Beat 3 in a row and you win the big prize. Although whenever this happens, I always expected to see a weight fall on the opponent's head. The amount of money you can win is good, but it is based on luck. Some opponents do have patterns or favourite cards, but you're still guessing half the time. Now, if you really want to punish yourself, you can go up against this wizard fellow, who's apparently some kind of super champion expert at this game. But I'm just reminded about the Urban Dictionary definition of a wizard, and that's someone who's still a virgin over the age of 30. And I'm pretty sure just playing rock, paper, scissors will get you there. In short, this minigame outwore its welcome very quickly. I only played it when I needed the money. Moving on to Blue Beach, and I'm still not wowed by the level themes. Although at least in this area you get a greater variety of enemies. Some of you who have played the previous games may wonder if there's a partner character. The answer is no. Well, there are certain cards that contain familiar Mario enemies. They are good to use, providing a shield and an extra attack. But they only stay for a single battle, and they don't really work on bosses, the battles where they will be the most effective. So most of the game it's just Mario and Huey. If you've been watching carefully, you may have noticed a pattern with the NPCs, and that's that 99.9% of them are toads. There's more fungus growing here than under a neat bed. It's a bland design choice really. It's like the character designer was asked to populate the world and they just hit Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, Ctrl-V. They should have called this one Paper Mario Photocopier really. We get to use the fan card at this point to provide a little wind in this person's sails. Just use them at rectangular slots, and if you select the right one, a sequence should activate. You can also use these cards in battle for special one-off attacks. I tend to save them for bosses. Back in town we get a letter from some green gentleman, and we're reminded that Paper Luigi in the Waffle Kingdom is and will always be a pipe dream. Indigo Underground, and it does appear we are going to go through all the classic Mario level tropes. And something which may be obvious about this stage is that Indigo Underground is indigo, which means you will mostly get blue paint here, while other colours become scarce. Which means you may not have enough yellow paint at times to paint certain cards. This is where I struggled a little, and I actually liked it. It made colour mixing relevant. It's also the level where I learned to keep an eye on what colour paint I was using. This part did have a memorable mini-boss, the Shunned guy. My guess is that he mistook an origami book for the Kama Sutra. He's the type of guy you would want to throw down a well. I did panic a little when fighting him, so I did end up using a few of the finger cards to end it quickly. Probably not really necessary. Next up is a more sunny environment, Daffodil Peak. It's here where you may wonder if you're nothing but a glorified redecorator, as the introductory part of this stage is to repaint this Toad's house. But the truth is that the repainting is a collectathon in practice. It's not about painting these spots, but finding them. When climbing the peak, I was introduced to flying enemies. This did make battling more interesting. You see, hammers don't work on flying enemies, and jumping doesn't work on spiked enemies, for the most part. So you have to think about what cards to use, and at this point you have to think about what order to use them in as well. You see, you can't really select which enemies you attack. It just selects the enemies left to right automatically, which arguably does require more thinking and strategy on your part, but I think I'd rather just be allowed to select which enemies I do indeed attack. A bit further up we encounter Magic Koopa, and like a bitch he uses magic to mess with your deck, such as turning all your cards into worn boots or make you unable to see what cards you're using. But if you've got a decent deck like me, it shouldn't really be an issue. Okay, I complained about the rampant Toad population, but what really stands out is that they're using a generic Magic Koopa here, when the series has featured a named one before, Kami Koopa. And perhaps you may have noticed at the beginning of the game, they didn't even use Toadsworth, and he's a character that has actually appeared in the main series. It's just a strange design choice. It's like they're actively trying to make this game blander. But anyway, with that level completed, we have the third and final key Toad, and with that we can face the first boss of the game. On the road to Crimson Tail we see an airship. This is probably more effective to someone who hasn't played a Mario game before. However, crashing an airship is always fun, although it wasn't part of my master plan. The Crimson Tower is appropriately foreboding, even if it is the old castle theme we've seen 100 times before. Here we meet Morton, and yes, I did complain about the lack of named characters, but to be fair, they have brought back the Koopalings, who I recently learned aren't actually Bowser's children. It just makes me wonder how they ended up working for him now. Perhaps they won a competition, or perhaps Bowser just fosters them for the checks. Either way, Morton is not the most articulate guy. Perhaps he's taken a few too many jumps to the head. When fighting him, you'll need the fire extinguisher, and that's how all these fights go. There'll be a specific thing card you'll have to find in order to defeat each of them. He's not that tough by himself, it's really a case of getting rid of the flunkies that stand in your way. It's a good idea to save your other thing cards for these fights. The humour is used well with these thing cards. Each one has a unique and fun animation. I will suggest that Morton should get himself checked out after I use the plunger on him. I don't know where it's been. I'll be honest about these boss fights here. With the exception of Wendy, which I beat on the first attempt, all the others I beat on the second. It really comes down to learning when to use the thing card, and of course learning the timing to dodge their attacks. It's this boss where I experienced my first death of the game, and it was because I foolishly blew my extinguisher a few turns too early, which I swear never happens to me, but with my lesson learned I easily beat him on the second attempt. With the first big red paint star collected and returned, he then fills us in on the story. It's no surprise really. It's the same song and dance we've heard a few dozen times before at least. Bowser is after a set of stars to conquer the world. We also get an update on how Peach is doing, and I think we all know what this little hologram reminds us of. With the red star now reclaimed for the good of the people, we are now onto the yellow star road. I made my way to Sunglow Ridge. A little after that I found an area covered in black paint. It's a taste of Bowser's plan. Like a goth who wants to redecorate, he wants to paint everything black. Huey at least seems to know how to handle this. He's a bucket that doesn't need a mop. One particular puzzle I found amusing was this sign which told me to hit it, by which it means the actual sign and not the bridge in front of it. It's one of those puzzles you want to hit yourself, not figuring it out sooner. It's at this point where I found the levels to be a lot more interesting. I made my way through Mondo Woods and encountered the big varieties of enemies. And by the way, the name Mondo is actually clever. It not only means remarkable, but in Italian it also means dog's world. Very appropriate considering what we're looking for here. The big enemies take more hits than the regular ones, but it's now that we get access to the big weapons. Self-explanatory. The real skill here is knowing when to use them. You see, using them on a weak enemy is a waste. You really want to save them for when you really need them. It's now when item management starts to become important. Marmalade Valley starts, and here we're looking for a dog and a bone. Princess, the giant chain chomp, makes an appearance here, and she unfortunately only knows one trick, and that's to roll over, repeatedly. To my embarrassment, I did die a couple of times here when trying to run away. Although don't ask me the logic behind that. I mean, Paper Mario is already flat. On to Kiwano Temple. Visually more interesting than the earlier levels, and also has this gimmick where you have to imitate a hamster to get around. It also ends on this sequence with rising lava and a giant spiny boss fight. The only annoying thing about him is that he puts a bat in the way, so you have to be careful in what order you jump and hammer. He also does this huge attack, but you can see coming a mile off. He does this huge wind up tail. You would have to be Stevie Wonder not to see it coming. Anyway, this level also has this second secret star which is hidden just beneath where you fight this guy. The only annoying thing about this is that you have to go through the level again to collect it, and it's not exactly a cheerful jaunt. With that done, I can head to Golden Colosseum and face the second boss. You have to make your way through the lobby to the central part, but before entering the arena, this guy rambles on about something, when I really could do with a clue on how to beat Iggy. I mean, come on, throw me a bone here. The theme of this area is a gladiatorial ring, and I like that. The boss fights get a lot more interesting from this point on, each one having something unique and entertaining about them. Before the actual fight begins, Iggy puts you in a battle royale. They swarm you. Here, it really hits you that managing items is important. Since the game uses cards, it means if you run out of a certain type of card, you just can't do that attack. Now, the game does allow you to roll for a card, where you'll spend 10 coins and you'll get one at random, and it's better than nothing. It's something to fall back on. I don't mind the idea of cards for special attacks. It limits them, like MP. It just becomes ridiculous when Jumpman can't jump without a card with a picture of a shoe on it. The developers, very wisely, do give you an out here and put a Starman right in this crate. You can use that to easily get past these enemies here. I tried to fight him, but the first time Huey warned me that I didn't have the right item. I had to run off and do this whole level backstage before facing him again. I picked up the bow and a few other items I'll need later. I have to wonder if this was intended, because I swear I tried to enter the backstage before but I couldn't get in. With the bone picked, I went on to face Iggy. It's just a case of waiting for the right time, and when you throw the bone, a princess will come to your rescue. And without his chariots, Iggy is quite easy to deal with. And with his defeat, we are golden with the second star of the game. And I think I'll leave it here for now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please join me for the next part.